Heidi, can you discuss shame from the past and getting rid of it? That's a pretty big topic. Are you okay with sharing a little bit more about what happened? Very generally, guilt and shame are very, very connected. They're very similar, but a little bit different. Guilt is, I've done something wrong, I've done something bad. And shame is, I have been something bad. So shame is a little bit more of a negative emotion, a little bit stronger, a little bit more, self, when we burden ourselves with these things. So, and both guilt and shame, especially shame, it's both of those things have to do with more shame than guilt, but have to do with how other people perceive us, and the notion that something someone else did influenced us, or that something that we have done or a way that we have behaved is why someone else feels bad. And of course you can do bad things for someone, and someone can do bad things to you, but shame comes from like, oh, you should be ashamed of yourself. You should be ashamed of yourself. It's always connected to someone else's judgment on us, and it's connected to, like, we feel shame because we have a standard in our mind of something that we haven't reached. So we feel ashamed that we haven't reached that thing, that standard. That's why we feel shameful. Like we haven't risen to some occasion of some expectation of somebody. Okay, so first of all, your father being incarcerated, you couldn't have done anything if you, like, that's completely out of your hands, completely. Just first getting that out of the way. Like, if your father was incarcerated when you were just a kid, that, like, that's not, you could have done nothing because you were a kid. You were just a little kid. You're just a little child. And then if you were bullied, that also is not something. I was bullied as well when I was a child, and only after I was much older did I realize that those were all kids, because I come from Croatia, and Croatia had a lot of war, especially right before I was born. So I was born in 91, I'm 31 now, and in 91 is when all of the Yugoslavian, Croatian, Serbian, Bosnian wars were slowly coming to an end. And I grew up in elementary schools where it was a public school, of course, and most of the kids had parents, like dads, that went and died in the war, or just gotten back from the war having PTSD and stuff like that, and they were beaten and stuff. So I had no idea, of course. I was a kid. My parents also survived the war, and I was sort of like, we had to run to Germany because the bombs fell on our city and everything. And only after a lot of me going into these types of things like psychology, emotional healing, mental health healing, the stuff that I provide for people, I first needed to do that myself. I could see that all of those kids that beat me up, that bullied me, only did it because their parents had suffered in war, and they just passed it on to them, and they didn't know what to do with it, so they just passed it on to me. And I felt like I was this little weak child. I felt guilty, that I felt like I made some sort of mistake, that I should have been equipped better. Almost in a sense, like I felt like I was the idiot for not like carrying guns in the school, or I mean not guns, but like I would crush myself with thoughts of like, Dennis, how could you have not known martial arts at 6? Like, how dare you not go and learn martial arts at 6 years old? How stupid were you? And then I had to sort of like, but I could, like, I was 6. Like, I need to ease off myself. Like, I was 6. I had no fucking idea what to do. I had my eyes were big towards the world. I was curious. I was like, these people are my friends. Like, all these little kids, they're all my friends. And then I get beaten up. And then I'm like, what did I do wrong? So I guess you got the same feelings, you know? You get the same feelings, like maybe if I did something else, my dad wouldn't have been incarcerated. If I did something better, I wouldn't have bullied. If I was a better parent, my son wouldn't have killed that person. But you also say, that's one point. The other point you say is that it's an involuntarily thing. So maybe it was like self-defense, maybe it was like, you surely know that your son is not a bad person, and that sometimes these things happen, and none of them are your fault. None of this is your fault. For sure, like even the parenting aspect, you might feel the most responsible, but some things we can't predict, and you can only do so much for a person. Like even as a friend, like even if you're friends with somebody, you're not responsible for what they do. You can give them guidance, you can give them insight, but in the end, it's not only you that influences them, it's also the world. They're also, like, you have a son, you have a daughter, you can do your best to be the best parent you can possibly be, but then that child also goes into the world. That child also goes into their own trials and errors and tribulations and travails, and the world also influences them, and they get conditioned by school, they get conditioned by society. So there's all these kinds of things where it's shame is like you. I bet you feel that if you have been a better person in some way, your father wouldn't have been incarcerated. If you have been a better person in some way, if you were stronger, you would have been bullied. Or if you just did something else, your son would have not done what he had done, and now you feel shame. But that shame comes from this internal voice, this internal taskmaster with a whip that goes like you fucking little idiot, if you only could have done this or that. And that's society, that's authority, that's some type of authority figure in our life that has this taskmaster archetype that whips us anytime we want to feel gentle with ourselves. It's like, but certain things are out of our power. Certain things you couldn't have done better. Like especially the ones when you were a kid concerning your dad and bullying, because I know what you're feeling. I've been there. My dad wasn't incarcerated, but I have a lot of things to feel guilty for. I have a lot of, like, my parents, I was an unplanned child and they had to think about keeping me or not keeping me alive, right? Making me come to this world. And all my life I felt guilty, because I can see it in them, that maybe if I wasn't born, they wouldn't have stayed together for 30 years. Maybe they would have had a different path. And some of the things I get, like my mom just straight out says, like, I tell her, like, Mom, I'm not responsible for your life. And then, like, what do you mean you're not? But who is then? And I'm like, but not me. Like, I did not choose this. So you did not choose the bullying. You didn't know better. You just didn't know better. And the shame feels now, like you say, it feels very close to you now because you're still holding it. Like, you're not responsible for those things. You're not responsible. And there's no shame in that. There is no shame in that. You are comparing your son to a perfect society. You're comparing your father to a perfect father. You're comparing your bullying childhood to a Disney movie where no one ever gets bullied. But life is very different. Life is so different. Like, we don't try to compare. Like, that's where shame comes from. Oh, I'm ashamed that I am not this perfect mother, or that my father was not the perfect role model, or that I wasn't the kid that can stand up to other kids when they get bullied. Like, the world is full of people like you and me, like people that got bullied. It's just very, very small minority people actually talk about it. And you are very brave to come to this live and share this. You're very brave to admit that you have shame. You're very strong that you can say all these things. You're very strong if you can cry about it. You're very strong if you can, like, pat yourself on the back. That's strength. But we are taught to believe that we need to be bricks. That we need to be fucking bricks that don't feel anything. And that we all need to be this cookie cutter, perfect, doll on the shelf. But there's no such thing. It's all make-believe. It's all in the movies. It's all on Instagram. It's all people playing pretend that their life was perfect, that their childhood was perfect, that everyone had Barbies and Ken dolls and summers in the seaside, and their parents were amazing. And maybe some of us had some of that, but nobody had everything. Nobody had everything. And there's no shame in any of this. There's no shame in any of this. It means that you feel you were bad, but this was just life. This was just life, I'm not saying this because I was born with this. I had to go if not the same things as you, with the son and the father, but I had to go through a lot of things, a lot of tears, a lot of periods where I thought I was going insane, a lot of depression, and then you come out of it, and then depression, and then you come out of it, and a lot of drug addiction, and food addiction, and people addiction, and emotional stuff, and also guilt. I struggle with guilt. Even to this day, less and less, of course, but just the difficult part is gonna be to replace the shame with tears, to replace the shame with like laying on the floor crying and cuddling yourself and starting new things and talking to your son in an open manner and talking to your father in an open manner, and maybe talking, like having compassion for the kids that bullied you, because they are also like kids of parents that have PTSD. They are kids who also didn't have fathers next to them. Society makes us believe that there is a perfect family somewhere out there, that there is a perfect way to be a human, and we all gotta attain it. And it is there, but it's nothing you've ever been taught. It's nothing. There's also a perfect man out there, but he's nothing that the society tells you he needs to be. There's also a perfect woman out there, but she is nothing that society makes her. So the perfect man is not a emotionless brick that can take everything and just go through life like nothing phases him. And the perfect woman is not the housewife that never complains and has perfect hair and breasts and dresses up and, you know, also doesn't complain ever. No, these things don't exist. They can exist as also, you know, like the perfect mother, since we're on this term, like a perfect mother that makes no mistakes, and the child comes perfect from a perfect mother. No, because there's no such thing. Because life is messy, life is turbulent, life is unexpected, and that's what makes it amazing. And we would never learn things if there was no pain. Like, pain keeps me conscious. Like, shock keeps me conscious. Adversity keeps me conscious. Challenge, pain. I'm not a masochist. Like, I don't wake up in the morning and go, nah, fucking this is nice, and I cut. Like, even that's, maybe some of you have done that, and that's okay. I'm just over exaggerating. I'm not knocking on somebody's path of, some people did that. I'm just saying adversity in life, you know. And there's no shame, to get back to you. I'll read some of the other things that you wrote. I want to finish my thoughts. Is that shame? It's like, I could have done more. I should have done more. I haven't done enough. How could I have allowed myself to done that, to do that? But like I can tell you from a perspective of, I don't know how old your son is, but I'm 30, my parents are 50, and it took me a lot to forgive them. I was very resentful. I was like, why the fuck didn't you give me role model love? Why didn't you give me motherly cuddling or stuff like that? Why couldn't you teach me how to be gentle with myself? And then I go like, but they didn't have it. And they knew, they did the best they could. So you also did the best you could. And he also did the best he could. And your father as well. And it's a collective pain. Like, nobody suffers more or less. Some people just hide it better. And maybe some people haven't suffered yet, but it's gonna come. You can this life is necessarily dual. It's necessarily everything, the whole scale: happiness, suffering, sadness, depression, and highs with no end. You gotta have both. You gotta have everything. So if you felt all this pain, you're just a person that's very sensitive to life now. You are now a seer, you're a feeler, you've broken yourself open. And you can now feel things other people can't. You can feel it more deeply. The more pain you feel, the more love you can feel. That's also a thing.